All right, welcome everyone to this edition of Digital Badge Academy's podcast series. I'm Jim Daniels, your co-host, here along with David Leeser. And David, you have a topic that you've queued up today that we're going to opine a bit about, I think, is what you have in mind. So why don't you kick things off for us, introduce the topic of interest, and take it from there.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the OECD. The OECD, it stands for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. And basically what they do is it's a public policy group. They work with about 100 countries or something like that around the world to build stronger, fairer, cleaner, more educated societies. And the OECD publishes some really interesting data because they're able to they get access to a lot of information from these different countries. And one thing that struck me unbelievably was the OECD report on employee mismatches. These are people that are either overemployed, they have too many skills for the job they're in. They're in the wrong job. They should be advanced, or people who are underemployed that don't have the skills to do their jobs. And when you think about that, in both cases, it's a serious problem for society. It not only costs an enormous amount of money, but it also creates an awful lot of strain in organizations and in countries because they're not maximizing the full potential of their workforce. I'm going to show, if that's okay, Jim, I'm going to show.
Yeah,
the
yeah. And by the
OECD.
way, I think that's a systemic problem, across employers worldwide.
Oh, yeah.
Just instinctively, right, and just through experience, and you hear people talk about a lot about imposter syndrome and stuff. Maybe that in part is brought about because people are put in roles that they don't have all the specific skills really needed to truly excel at what they're doing. Not that they don't have the capacity to learn those skills,
Right.
they just don't have them or a pathway to acquire them,
Well,
maybe.
you think about how many people in customer service who you
Yeah,
you don't want to blame them because they don't know how to work the cash register
right.
or don't know how to, answer your question on a customer service call. And then again, like I said, there's so many people that are stuck in dead end jobs. And in both cases, they're destroying the morale for the company. They're reducing the productivity for the company. Uh,
Hmm.
and it's costing them money too, because they should be in better jobs or more fulfilling jobs, and it trickles down to their families and everything else. So
Right.
it's a big, big problem, and I think we're going to tie this around to how badges can help with this. But let me show the
Yeah,
data.
let's see what you were going to show us something here.
Yeah, I think this was interesting. Tell me if you can see my screen right here.
Yep.
Uh, but so this is the OECD report, and if you just go to OECD.org, you can find this report on mismatches, employee mismatches. But look at some of these numbers. These are basically what they did was they looked at the field of study mismatch. I don't think that's a big problem. You could have had an English degree and yet you're working in IT. I mean, that was my case, right? I was in communications.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Right. I think
Hmm.
that's not that to me, that's not the big issue. But the qualification mismatch is the big one. Overqualified or underqualified for the jobs. Now look at some of these numbers. Like I'm going to go down to like Mexico. 50% of the people are in the wrong roles, one way or another. They're either under or overqualified for these roles. 38% are overqualified and 11% are underqualified. And you look at, let's say, like the United Kingdom, not much better, really. Look at the United Kingdom, 40%, 14% are overqualified, 26% are underqualified. So in New Zealand, 28% of the people that are in their jobs are underqualified. I mean, that a third of the workforce. I mean,
So, so yeah,
it's staggering, right?
and it truly it's a worldwide issue, and this data does back up what I talked about. Personally, I felt just instincts told me that this is probably the case. Now, I will say, I think I have a little bit or a slightly different point of view about field of study mismatch.
Hmm.
We know that that happens. My wife has a degree in psychology, but she ended up in a IT career.
Right.
Um, I have to say, I went into electronics engineering, way back when I first attended college, and I pretty well stayed. I stayed in the IT career, right? So certainly related to that. My son started out pursuing an aerospace engineering degree and ended up becoming a motion graphics designer, graphic designer, and voiceover artist. So
And you know what? Here's the deal though with the
but
mismatches.
says something, are we
Yeah.
doing enough ahead of pursuing a college degree to
Oh,
help
well, that's
students
another point.
understand
Right.
what their real potential is, what they would truly excel at and be drawn to, and that's a whole it's kind of a whole
That's a whole
nother
nother
topic.
conversation on career matching on the front end of this
Right,
thing.
right, right.
Um,
Not that it would I don't think that there's a way to completely eradicate that dynamic,
right.
um, but I think that that's a number that could be
Most people
reduced
don't know
with
what they want to do in life, even when they're old.
that's part of it too. Some of it is at that stage in life, yeah.
They
Have
need
you
a
are you
career
really
coach,
yeah,
you know. But so
exactly.
so anyway, this
Anyway,
data.
yeah.
So anyway, starting to think about all these numbers, and you can download this, and there's developer APIs for this information. It's pretty detailed. I don't even know what the layout does, but you can change things around, pivot table type stuff, so you can apply different layouts. So it's really, you can create stack columns and things like that. But anyway, this OECD website, we can put the link in for this site as well. But here's the deal: is can digital badges help with this? And I think the answer is yes.
Oh, I think
And
so.
for a lot of reasons, Jim.
Well, you and I have personally seen digital badges applied in a capacity that would lend proof that they can help, right? I mean, we both come from IBM. I think that's a well known fact at this point. And we were both at the very front end of creation of IBM's digital credentialing program and strategy. The overarching approach to using digital credentials. And we also saw how the Career and Skills Organization stepped in back at IBM and helped create this marriage of different data sets. But you have this incredibly rich data set that is brought about by the digital badging and all the metadata that exists in there, and metadata that's done in a thoughtful way. By the way, I'm not going to go down that rat hole in this podcast, but there's a right way to document what goes into a digital badge, and there's a wrong way. And I see the wrong way followed more often than the right way out in particularly in industry. But if you've done that correctly, then you have all these other data sets inside your organization, employee demographic data, salary data, departmental data. It just goes on and on. And I think ultimately it's the marriage of all that and bringing that together. And the badging data, I think, is kind of the secret sauce in a way that helps pull
Yeah,
that
and
together in
think
a
about it.
meaningful way.
So, and when you think about it, well, I mean, in backing up from there, a lot of information isn't captured. Right? I mean,
Well,
there's
that's true.
information, it's on a resume, it's on a performance review, it's on some sort of application for the job. It might be aligned to, aligning to the job descriptions. But so, when I think about the OECD capturing this information from these organizations, I wonder if they captured it all. Because when you think about it, a lot of companies rely on the data that are in their existing, sometimes archaic systems, their learning management systems, for example. And when there are a lot of things that are done outside of the learning management system, people might have gone to a hackathon, they might have gone on a speaking engagement, they might have taken a course, on Coursera or YouTube or some other, Udemy or someplace like that.
So the
Um,
data is there, but
the
it's
data is
fragmented and it
somewhere.
exists in isolation.
It's not necessarily, maybe the organization doesn't have access to the data, or it doesn't have the visibility, and it certainly doesn't have the structure that makes it easy to catalog it. And that's
Right.
what badges can do, right? If we badged all this stuff, including these self-assertions, people that take YouTube courses and do other things, if they even create a self-assertion with evidence, why shouldn't that information then contribute to this holistic view of skills and capabilities?
Well, that's an incredibly good point you just made. I think it's beyond silly that we haven't fully embraced the concept of issuing badges to ourselves based on experience that we're gathering or achievements things that we're accomplishing outside the mainstream of what's actually being tracked, right? If you have the ability to self assert something and have that show up in the form of a badge, and then have the ability to have that endorsed as an example, that should sit right alongside any other credential, career credential, digital badge, micro credential, whatever terminology you want to use, right? It should
Right.
sit right alongside of it. And I think that's there's still work to be done there.
Also, inside those badges, there's also, I think there's a lot of work to be done on an employer side inside the badge,
Oh
because
yeah.
inside the badge, so if you say that we created these badges, right? Well, inside the badge, we can create skills paths and career progression within the badge. So those people that are overqualified, guess what? We can start looking at their qualifications, make sure that's built into the badge. If you have these particular skills and capabilities, let's get you the skills, or let's get you into a different role where you can start to use your skills in a better way. And that can be built right into the badge.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. That almost kind of makes me think about, the ability to define pathways and have, badged uh, uh, badged pathways, right? Which is a newer thing that's on the scene, and some of the commercial issuing platforms have embraced. But yeah, it's
So you got this visible verification of the skills data, which is critical for solving this problem, right? That everything is easy, it's visible, and it can be verified, and it's all in this standardized format. You have an opportunity to build skills progression into the badges, so you can start getting people that may not be as skilled as they need for the roles. If you really had a good taxonomy on the front end of this thing, and you align that to, here are the skills and capabilities you need, and here are the learning paths or the courses to get those skills, that could be built right into badges very, very easily.
well,
And
it
then
can.
upskill
It
and make sure they check all the boxes for the role.
Yeah, it can. And I'll take that one step further as kind of a call to action to everyone out there that's produced a digital credentialing platform for issuing badges. Put a rules engine in your platform, for heaven's sakes,
Yeah,
because so few do that. And you need a rules engine. And the reason why is because career pathways and learning journeys, learning pathways, they're rarely linear these days.
right.
They jump around kind of all over the place. Or if you are pursuing a structured learning pathway, which does exist, by the way. I'm not saying not that, there's no such thing as linear learning journeys. There are, clearly, but oftentimes there's more than one way to get from point A to point B. And
Yes.
so you have the option of going, you know, route A or route B or route C. And you need a way, you need some intelligence built into the badging apparatus to be able to help organize that in a way that makes sense to the person who's actually pursuing that objective, the person that's, going through the training, investing their time. And so anyway, that just popped into my head, and it's something that I would really like to see. It's kind of that, to me, it's that last mile in the ability to really enrich the data that's in a badge and make it super, super valuable.
You know what? You just reminded me, and I'm going to show another chart. And this is kind of one of my favorite charts, and I know it's one of yours too. And I showed it at TechLearn this year, the training magazine TechLearn conference. But I want to show it again because this reminds me of what you're saying. And this is another thing that you can do with badges, right? So I'm going to share this bigger. But the whole idea of an ontology, I think that's where you're going with that, right? There might be another
Exactly.
pathway
Yeah.
to get from one place to another. So if you use badges, you can start using your ontology using badges. So, for example, a person that might be in a customer service role, which is an entry level job in IT, right? But they've developed all of these skills and capabilities. They understand how to use CRM systems. They know how they have these soft skills for customer service and everything. Well, maybe they'd be good in tech support. Maybe they'd be good in sales. Maybe they'd be good tech sellers. And you have all these skills that they already have. Maybe they have 10 or 12, 10 current skills. Well, you only have to skill them up on maybe 3 or 4 to get them into a better role in the organization.
Exactly.
And if you have
Yeah.
that information badged at that micro level and you use an ontology like you were just talking about, this isn't hard to do. It's really not hard to do at all.
No, and I've seen solutions out on the market that could pull in badging data and then using a whole separate solution and level of intelligence kind of get at this sort of conclusion. Where are you? What skills do you have? And oh, there's four other kinds of roles that you're just a breath away from being qualified for. All you need are these two extra skills, and it opens up a whole new potential career path for you, right? So back to your point, yeah, what I would like to see is those kinds of capabilities come together in a little bit more seamless way within the credentials themselves. And I think that's what you were getting at earlier. You've got, I mean, digital badges are just that. They're digital and they're full of metadata. Why not build in the capability that as you're going through this process and you're earning these badges, that it can intelligently inform you that, hey, based on what you have accomplished in the way of earning these digital credentials, did you know that if you go and tackle these other two topics over here, you're potentially opening yourself up to these two or three new kinds of roles, which could be represent true upward mobility for that individual, both at a career level and um, even at an economic level, right, from a pay standpoint. So
And that's why you do have to capture all this information, the formal
yeah,
and informal learning,
exactly.
all of this stuff into the badges, because now so if you did that with badges and you start to catalog stuff and you allow people to do self-assertions with evidence, let's say they watched a YouTube video and then they produce some kind of work product and they can point to the URL on that. Now you have all this data, you have all this rich data, you have built into your badges this career progression, you have built into the badges all these paths. You have an ontology that says, well, if they have these three or four skills and they're similar to these other three or four skills that are used in this other role, all we need to do is add these other two. Now, like you said, leaders can make informed decisions if they have, well, first of all, they have to put all that information into a data lake and they have to have the right tools, like
Right. You
AI
do
driven.
need a common repository for the data to live within.
Right. And the skills registry that a digital badge platform creates is pretty good. I mean, it's going to get a lot of it, but like you said, the double whammy is if you can join these data sources, right? You take other
Exactly.
sources from other things like customer support records or something like that.
Right. Right.
So you have all of that, so you have these other data sources because I'm convinced that most of that information from the OECD report and most companies, they're just not doing that. They're looking at somebody's performance review. They're looking at what job did they already have. And then they're making decisions based on this limited paperwork that they have.
Yeah, I mean, we have all of these modern innovations in uh, how we can train people, how we can upskill them, how we can track that information, how we can recognize it. You know, obviously through digital credentials, badging, that kind of thing. But in practice, I mean, at the end of the day, most employers are just following the same old um, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Well, they're using the same model that they've been using
Well,
forever,
that's yeah.
you know?
They're following this using the same approach they've always used. Like you said, resumes. They're just looking at resumes and things of that nature. Now, I will say it somewhat defense of employers. I think from an HR stack standpoint, there's some things that haven't, in terms of the software solutions that make up the HR tech stack. I think that there's still a ways to go there. But I think the reason why there is, I mean, it kind of goes back and forth. It's almost which came first, the chicken or the egg. I think software companies would step up and enhance their solutions or create new solutions so that you had an HR tech stack that could truly take advantage of these things and enable some of the things that we're talking about. But that's not going to happen without demand. And I
Right.
think the demand is weak, right? I think employers are not demanding it at a level that is causing companies to go out and produce those kinds of innovations and solutions. Um, I don't
Yeah,
have an answer on what the turning point is, but
Well, I do. I have one answer for it, and the answer is it's based on human nature. Is that the pain of people don't change unless the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of changing. That's the bottom line.
That's true.
And if
Yeah.
they don't see the pain and they don't see the value, they're not going to change, and that's just the nature. So I think it's up to some of these vendors that are creating these solutions, including the digital badge platform providers, to show the value propositions and the loss. It's interesting when, from a psychological perspective, and if anybody's familiar with Cialdini, but Cialdini has done some really interesting research with some very big companies on how to get people to buy. And there are two different ways to get people to buy. One is to show them the value, and one of them to show them the loss. So if you go and you're trying to sell, let's say you're trying to sell solar panels, right? And you can say, hey, you know what? These solar panels will, you'll be able to save $100 a month, using these solar panels. That's $1,200 a year, right? Now you do the same ad and you say, you are losing $100 every month. Every month that you wait doing this, you're losing $100. Last year, you lost $1,200.
Yeah.
Guess which one motivates people?
Yeah.
People do not like loss, you know? And
Well, and and maybe it kind of gets to another dynamic here, right? If you think about, really leveraging digital credentialing in a smart way as an employer to give yourself a leg up on how you attract or recruit and hire talent, how you track the continuous upskilling
yeah,
of talent and that kind of thing. That ultimately, if you do that right, that's going to give you a competitive advantage,
yes,
right?
yeah,
And as your competitors start to see that, what is it they're doing? Why are they able to draw the best talent, or why do they have,
right.
uh, people that can, do this work so much better than that? I think there will be a time when people start to get it, and it will be seen as a need to have versus a nice to. I think it's still largely a nice to have kind of um, component as far as the career and skills ecosystem within the employer space, but yeah, it needs to be a need to have. Right now, it's I think largely a nice to have for a lot of employers, or that's kind of how they look at it. Maybe they look at it a little bit as kind of experimental, but I think once it becomes obvious, and I personally, for me, it is obvious, but it's got to be obvious, for the masses, that digital credentialing is that mechanism to capture all of this rich information that can make such a huge difference. Then it will make that transition from nice to have to need to have.
Yeah, and I don't even think the systems have to catch up yet. I think that if somebody has this information and they have, but they are going to need the skills and capabilities in their L&D and HR organizations to make this happen. They need to have data analysts capabilities, data visualization, some basic data science capabilities, and a place to store this data. I mean, this is the kind of stuff, Jim, you've done for most of your career without waiting for the HR systems to catch up.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there were no HR related solutions on the market that existed to do any of this stuff, right? Other than, I mean, back during my time at IBM, obviously, we reached out and developed a partnership with a third party to provide the credentialing platform. Everything else was developed in house in terms of that marriage of the credentialing data and other kinds of data sources. There was the data lake that was created. There was, eliminating this fragmentation and isolation of valuable information, getting it all into one place. Beyond that, and to your point, you have to have, data engineers. You have to have people that know how to script. Uh, it takes an investment, and it takes
Yeah.
some effort to pull that together. And you have to have tools to visualize and present this information and make it easy to mine the information. You don't want to have to be a data engineer to go in and figure out how to get something useful out of that ecosystem. It needs to be pretty intuitive and not require a degree, to take advantage of. And
No,
that,
you think about that.
IBM accomplished that, right? But that's a big ecosystem, a lot of smart people inside that organization. that were able to make that happen. But that happened, that was years ago. Years ago.
Yeah. No, I mean, you think about it, even just basic tools like Excel and Tableau and Python and little bit of SQL stuff, but mostly like Tableau, Excel, some of these things, people can learn these how to use these tools in a very short amount of time that doesn't require a lot of sophisticated IT competency to do this.
Right.
So, well, anyway, I just thought that this whole idea of the employee mismatches is a perfect example of why we need to use digital badges to capture the information in a consumable format, in a standardized format, to be able to solve these types of problems.
Absolutely. It's one of the most compelling things that have come along in recent years to really help document and raise awareness of what people know, what they can do, what they've mastered, where the skills gaps exist, and to your point, and to the point of this study, understand the what the mismatch might look like across your landscape. Because I guarantee you, I don't care who you are, employer wise, uh, you've there's a good deal of employee and job mismatch that's
Yeah.
taking place in your organization. And digital badges, I'm not saying it's in a singular way is the be all end all. It's an ecosystem of, it's a different way of thinking that you have to apply. But I think digital badges sit as part of that core mechanism to really make that go off and address that problem in a meaningful way.
Yep. All right. Well, listen, let's post that link to the OECD data if anybody wants to take it
Yep,
down.
we'll put that up on the screen right now. And so just go check it out. It's a really interesting set of data, very eye-opening. And that's really interesting topic, David. I wasn't aware of that organization or that study. I know you came across it, so I appreciate you taking the time to for us to have this conversation.
Yep, it's a problem that needs to be solved. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Are you ready to take your organization to the next level? Book a free, no obligation 1-hour coaching session with Digital Badge Academy. Discover how digital badges can help with upskilling and reskilling your workforce, enhancing employee engagement, and even boosting your organization's brand. Use the link shown here to book your free session today.